to a load, like say a light bulb, goes through the light bulb, comes back on the neutral through that panel, and goes back up to where it came from. It goes from the source all the way through the system back to the source. That is how a circuit works. And if too much current happens or something happens, all of a sudden that breaker will sense, because it's in the middle of a circuit, in the middle of a complete loop, it'll sense that there's a problem and it will cut the circuit off. But we'll say we have a metal wash machine instead of a light bulb. Actually, let's say we have a light fixture that same light bulb was on before. And for some reason, the black conductor that is hot, that's live right now, all of a sudden like breaks off and touches the metal of that fixture. What's going to happen? Well, if we don't have the neutral and the grounds bonded together, the ground, the metal piece of equipment, even though it has a ground wire going to it, doesn't have a return path. If you follow the ground wire, you know, say we've got our black wire goes through here, we've got this piece of metal, it comes, that the piece of metal is around the fixture is attached to the ground wire, and the ground wire goes back into the panel and lands on the bus inside of here. But how does that metal bus, that strap, attach to bring current back up to the source, to allow that full circuit to flow, for there to know that there's a problem to trip that breaker? There isn't one. So we have to bond the neutral and the ground together so that we can give a return path and complete the circuit to let that breaker know, hey, there's a problem, we need to trip the breaker. So ground fault technology, arc fault technology, any kind of breaker, all of it works on the premise that we need a complete circuit for current to flow through it. Flow through it in large amounts or small amounts or anything, but it has to flow. And the only way that a circuit is going to flow, current's going to flow, is if we have a complete circuit from a source all the way back to a source. That's the reason that we put the neutral and the ground together, is that we have two different kinds of fault conditions. We have we have really three, but for this purposes, we're going to talk about two. We've got the short circuit, which is a type of fault. It's a type of problem, and that is between a hot and a neutral, or it could be a hot and a hot. But either way, with a hot and another hot, we have a complete circuit. So if a fault happens in a circuit between two different hots, we have a complete circuit that breaker can use to trip and clear the fault. If it's a hot and a neutral, again, we have a complete circuit. We can trip a fault. But with the hot and a ground, we have to somehow make the complete circuit. And the only way to do that is connecting neutral and ground, so that the neutral becomes the path that that fault current travels once it hits the panel and goes back up to the power pole. That's pretty much it. That's as simple as we need to go with it, or as complex as we need to go with it. The problem becomes when people don't know when to bond and where to bond and what size conductors or what things to bond. And for this, we have to go into 250 in the National Electrical Code. Now, both 2017 and 2020 are going to be the same on this. There's no difference. But in 250 Part 5, or it's really Roman numeral 5, so Part V, that's where it talks about bonding. And it talks about